Welcome to Heartspeak Podcast, episode 84, Being Courageous. Well, we're entering and we're going to be part of the gibbous moon, the moon phase just before the full moon. We've been here before if you've been following me. And how's your little plant doing? Is it growing? Is it changing? Is it, like mine, growing deeper roots? Have you also seen that you have other shoots around you supporting you? Well, now as we take this step as the hero, as the heroine, as this part of us that is moving towards fullness, towards fulfillment, we need courage, because this is often a stage where we start to doubt ourselves, or we think other people are better than us, or we compare ourselves with others. And it's a time where we can really become stagnant, to stall our movement, to say, okay, I'm not going any further. And maybe you can see times in your life when you've done that, where you've said, I had an idea and I took it so far, but I never got further. I was going to do a website, but I couldn't find the right people, so I stopped doing it. I was going to do a blog, but I lost my laptop, so I stopped writing. I was going to sell this, but then I found that I needed a store, so I didn't bother. There are so many reasons that we give up. We may even have just not even started the dream. I had an idea, I've talked about it, but I'm never going to do it. Throat chakra, making excuses, asking lots of questions, but not actually swallowing and moving forward. And it doesn't matter who you are. Maybe you've only got, in many ways, a small dream. Many of you have big dreams. Doesn't matter the size of the dream. We can stop ourselves. We are really good at this. We can find fault with ourselves. We can remember an incident where someone told us that, well, you don't speak well, so just give up now. There are so many ways in which we can excuse ourselves. We can not experience that courage. And when I use the word courage, I was feeling the word comes from kua, of the heart. This isn't about courageous stupidity. This isn't about having faith. This is about having the courage to follow through. I was thinking about calling this taking risks, but it's not about taking risks. That maybe is the first step that we were working with after the new moon. This is about courageously keeping going. This is about falling down and getting up again. This is about not looking at your mistakes, so-called mistakes, as a reason for giving up. And I've been very reflective in the last few days of things that have happened to me in the past. And I could say there were things that I probably wouldn't do again, but maybe I wouldn't be the same person if I hadn't done them then. I'm sure you've got incidents like that. Times when you thought, I probably shouldn't have spoken to that person that way, or maybe I could have been more caring, or I could have done something different. Maybe I wouldn't have got into that relationship if I had thought further. But in real honesty, there's nothing I regret having done. Now, that might sound strange when I just said that, but I don't think I would have been where I am now had I not done those things. And I hope you've got times like that, those experiences. Imagine us living in a society when everything that we did wasn't judged as right and wrong. What if everything we did was, okay, so what did you learn from that? Okay, are you going to do it again? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. What if there weren't these man-made rules of right and wrong, many times coming from religion, from our culture, from our parents? But they also are limiting beliefs. Sometimes I think about things I've done that I didn't share it with anybody else. Maybe even afterwards I didn't share. But I knew if I'd listened to somebody else, I might never have done it. I think I may have told you before of a gentleman I met years ago who decided he was going to do something he'd always wanted to do, which was to go and create his own business. He was an engineer. And he set up his own business, he became the boss, and within 2 years, he was bankrupt and he had to go back to the original employer and ask for the job back. And all his mates said, "Told you so." And he said, "Yes, but at least I did it." And he would never live with regret. And that's what I mean about the courageous hero. What have you done that you said, yeah, of course, that probably isn't something I would do again. I learned from it or whatever. I gained the wisdom, but I don't have any regret that I didn't do it. I didn't take the risk. I think I have a feeling about that with certainly my first marriage, that afterwards people said, well, we could have told you, told you so. And it was like, you have no idea how I've grown, what I experienced because of that marriage. Would I do it again? No. But sitting on the couch, sitting on the sofa and making judgments on other people is really such an easy game to play. And at the moment, we've got a lot of game players, people making judgments on each other's actions. And it's almost like, walk a mile in my moccasins, but you can't even know me then. But please, until you've done what I've done, then we'll have a conversation, but not before. I remember some years ago when I was teaching complementary medicine, a woman told me that when she'd gone home to her husband and he said, what's that rubbish you've been learning? She said, when you have as much knowledge about this as I do, then we'll have this conversation. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut. I think that's a great way of looking at it. It seems to be just so easy nowadays to be able to put people down without ever having to have a conversation. And it feels that in this gibbous moon, we may not be talking about today. You may be thinking about things that have happened during the past. Other people making comments. And of course, because you already were carrying that, yes, hit me here, notice, it hit hard. It triggered you. You reacted. And if they'd said something else, you may have not reacted at all. But it was so pertinent that perhaps there are a run of things that people say to you that you take on board. As you all have heard me say, are very responsible. So when someone tells me I wasn't very responsible, that's one of my triggers, and that I'm very much dealing with and saying, I am responsible for what I do, my acts, my thoughts and actions, but I'm not responsible for you and for how you receive what I do. That's all I can do, is to be responsible for myself. So we are in this gibbous moon at the moment where everything that's coming at us is looking at, not just do we have the courage to say, oh, it's water off a duck's back, I don't care what people think. You probably do if you're making that much noise. But what if it's really about meeting a part of you that you say, I am either not going to fulfill your expectations of me, or I'm going to own that part of me that you keep showing up, and I'll say, that's who I am. Oh, you're not very responsible. And I say, no, I like being irresponsible. It's like a freedom. So the gibbous moon is not about getting it right or wrong. It's about gathering into our heart courage, those things that we may have been avoiding loving in ourselves. And, if I may say, dismissing those who aren't worthy to actually have that conversation. It's so easy for, as I say, those sitting on the sidelines, those sitting on the couch, who have never taken a risk, to either make comments or to cause the sort of, well, I wouldn't do that. And you would think, no, it's probably you wouldn't do that because you've never left that couch. Or so sometimes we need to be recognizing that what we're doing is scaring other people by our very actions. And their need to comment, their need to criticize is really a signal of their own insecurity. That makes sense? So that if it disturbs someone, it possibly is either their insecurity about you having more courage, you may be moving forward when they're not, or maybe you disturbing the status quo that is so comfortable around them. And this may come from a family, it might come from a community, it might come from a group. But if you consider yourself as a hero, as a knight, the wonderful knight that's going into not just battle, but into life, if you can take yourself back to maybe a time where you were confident, it wasn't that everything was going to be perfect, but you weren't scared of making mistakes. Literally, you tested the world, you bounced against some authority figures, you maybe did things that you thought, okay, but it didn't devastate you. Because in your core, you knew that life was about taking risks, about entering into unknown situations, about, as I say, pushing the boundaries. And you knew that you couldn't know life while you stayed in the center of the teeter-totter, in the center of what we call, now I've forgotten what we call it, a seesaw. So by staying in the center of a seesaw or teeter-totter, you're kind of like, oh, I'm safe, I don't have to move. No, your courage is leaving the center, going far out from the center, coming back to the center with the experiences and the wisdom that you've experienced, then going in the opposite direction, coming back to the center. So really it's about how far have you traveled from your center? How far have you courageously got into places that made you feel a bit nervous, but you actually knew you had to do this in order to experience and deepen your awareness of who you are? That takes courage. And I really know that you have that courage. And each time you fought a battle, and again, I maybe don't want to use, but each time you've stretched yourself or come up against something that caused you to, yes, to fight for yourself, to challenge your beliefs, it actually has made you stronger. You know, this gibbous moon reminds me very much of the sign of Cancer. And if you're Cancerian, don't get lost in this. This is all just about a symbol. You know, Cancer the crab, wonderful individual, wants everybody to be happy. But when people aren't happy, there's a tendency to go within the shell or hide under a stone and not come out until everybody's happy again. That is the downside of Cancer. Otherwise, it's very loving and accepting and homely. But I'm asking each of us not to hide under a shell, not to go asleep, as I keep saying, not to go to sleep, not to pinch people with your pincers just because you don't like what they're saying. This stage of the gibbous is about, I'm going to courageously go into places. It's not about getting it right and wrong. It's about having the courage to do it in the first place. And anybody else who tells me that I shouldn't have done that, if they're on the same path as you, if they're exactly where you are, then you might listen to them. Otherwise, walk on. And be aware that every time you meet a part of yourself and you bring it back to your heart, because you said, I gained the strength of the lion because of this. I met the part of me that rather go inside the shell, and I still love that part. You become stronger. So I'm asking you to look at times in your life that have been shaky, have been scary, have been perhaps a little dark, and ask yourself, and how did I grow? How did I become more courageous? What got me through this? Maybe it was just a stubbornness and a determination. Maybe it was the self-preservation. Maybe it was just survival instincts. But it's not just picking yourself up and moving on. It's about saying, if I had never been there, I would not be who I am now. if I'd never found I lost my parents early, or if I had never fallen out of love with someone, or if I had not been adopted, I wouldn't be where I am. I don't want anybody to, I don't believe we have to suffer to grow. But what I do know is that sometimes our suffering is our greatest growth. Because we go inside. When everything outside us fails, we can say, okay, I give up. Something inside us says, keep going, keep going. And it might not be pretty and it might not be quick, but it's there. And maybe you have the friends and the family around you that support you, or even your pets. Sometimes it's just that inner courage to keep going. So during this gibbous moon, ask yourself, where am I making excuses? Where am I not stepping out? Where is my, if I may say, ego still involved with wanting people's approval, or wanting people to see me as perfect, or wanting me to see me in a certain role? Because a lot of the reasons that we don't get to the full moon and shine is because we've already judged ourselves. We've already thought someone else is going to do it better than I am. What have I got to say? I mean, I hear that so many times. Well, everybody else has written a book on that. What have I got to say that's different? What have I got to give? I don't know until you put it out there. But I do know that everybody is unique. And I think just putting it out there is as important as whether other people really read it. I've got to say, having the courage to do it, to be able to celebrate, did it. And realizing that in this age, especially, the doing of it is more important than almost the feedback that you get. Because that's what is going to give you the greatest courage. You might be someone who, even if it's put out there, you say, oh, wasn't that great? You know, you may still stay in the gibbous stage where you put yourself down, even if you've done something. Can you honor yourself and say, I reached that point, I stepped up. I wish we didn't have things like being number one, being second, third. I have someone who I live very close to who always talks about how he failed to, in one race, not to be number one. That's the truth of it. We do that. We have those memories of something that happened maybe years ago. But it's the fact of you're here still. And maybe you ran that race as fast as you can and you were never, ever going to get to number one. I was there. I have memories of that when I was probably about 8 or 9. I couldn't have run any faster. I couldn't have learned any more. I couldn't have revised any better. But I did the best I can. And I have to say I'm very fortunate because I have 2 wonderful memories of 2 different schools where I got an award that had never been given before for the most improved person or the person who nearly got there. And I often think that the universe or my guidance has always helped and encouraged me. Even when I felt I wasn't number one or I didn't, somehow something came my way. Years ago, just after my divorce, I had finished my book, my Frontiers of Health book, my first book, and it had been published. And I decided I had to get away, and I went to Hawaii for a holiday at Christmas, because the worst time to be without a partner is at Christmas, especially if you've been with a partner. And I visited the different islands of Hawaii, which I still feel is like a magical home for me. I feel very much at home in Hawaii. And I was in a huge, huge hotel this time. And I can't remember, 20th store, 14th story, whatever. And I went on Christmas morning, I went to the elevator, the lift, to catch the lift to go down to breakfast. And I have to say, I was thinking, it's Christmas morning, I'm on my own, I'm in a place that isn't my home. And I was feeling a bit down. And on that one floor at that time, at that elevator, was this man who had been to hear me talk once in Sweden. And he said, oh, it's Christine. I bought your book. I've enjoyed it. I never saw him again. But that level of just tapping into something has been the fruitfulness of my life. Now, did I, as I've said to you, need his encouragement? Yes, I did. I'm not going to lie. I did. But it wasn't so much, yes, I was pleased to, that he'd read my book or whatever. But the fact that the universe had sent this one person to say, hi, I know you, you're not alone, was really important to me at that time. And I hope you've had times like that. I feel that sometimes angels have been sent to me when I've been down. And I don't know if anybody else saw that angel. I'm sure they didn't. But in those moments, someone just went, keep going. You're doing okay. And that's all we all need. We need not even a cheerleader. We need a friendly arm. We don't even need that person to know where we're going, which direction. We just need someone who says, keep going. It's okay. We see you. And I want you to know that your spirit world, your guidance is as strong as mine is. That every day they are looking at ways to just tell you you're doing great. Again, like a spectator on a marathon run, like keep going. And if you fall down, they can't come and pick you up, but they can go, keep going. And they can feel sorry for you, but they're never going to say, oh, just stop now. Obviously, you're not going to win this race. They say, it's okay, take your time. You're going to be there. And I think you've all had that, and you can hear my passion in my voice, is the fact that we have such a support team around us. And they're not asking you to be perfect. They're not asking you to do it right. They're saying you're already perfect. But every step you take, every encounter you make, every time you get out of bed in the morning, every time you go to bed in the night, you're doing great. And we all need that different times in our life. And we don't know where else someone else is on the path, but we do know that we know what it's like to be human. And we know how easy it's to be put down and discouraged. So I'm encouraging you. And the last part of this gibbous moon is also to gain, what I'm saying is gaining the wisdom of your experiences, but it's also recognizing the people you've met have influenced you. Just like that man, he influenced me. And other people have influenced me. And as I commonly say, if you have an emotional reaction to someone, they're pushing your buttons, that you're meeting a part of you that needs integrating. So just to be mindful of who are the people who have triggered you. And sometimes I say, think about the first 3 words by which you describe that. But this time I'm just going to say, think of the things that they have said to you that have triggered you to keep going or be stronger or to use those animals that you gained last time. So that it's almost like when someone says you can't do it, that might be the impetus for you to say, yes, I can. Or when they say you're crazy, you go, yes, I am. Watch me become crazier. So who have the people been in your life who, despite maybe you feeling wounded by their lack of support for you or their criticism of you or whatever it was, who are the people who, because of what they said to you, have made you stronger, have made you more determined, have meant that you actually got out of sitting in the gutter? Maybe you were sitting there feeling sorry and they say, oh, that's typical of you feeling sorry for yourself. That might have been the impetus for you to say, now I'm out of this, I'm getting up, even though you hated them for saying that. So as we move towards the full moon, this is a time for really loving those parts of yourself that don't get it right, loving those parts of yourself that want to give up, loving those parts of yourself that have been through the darkness, but also honoring those people who, whether they knew it or not, caused you to change your life, caused you to get out of a victimhood, to get out of martyrdom and say, enough. You know, we can't make any decisions being a victim. And one of my mottos is, don't become a victim to my choices. When I do something that I think, that wasn't the best choice, I don't become a victim to the choice. Otherwise, I just beat up on myself. So who are the people who you have really given you the impetus to pick yourself up and move on? To, not necessarily to do better than them, but definitely not to stay around them. So I hope I've given you enough to think about, enough to work with. Continue working on this wonderful bloom. It's coming into full bloom in the full moon. But I hope this will make your stem thicker, your leaves stronger. And you recognize that the nurturing that you bring to your plant doesn't come from outside you, but from within you, within your heart, within your courage. And until next time, send love and blessings.
Thanks for listening to the HeartSpeak podcast with Dr. Christine Page. Please check out all HeartSpeak episodes in the podcast archive section on www.christinepage.com. HeartSpeak is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and now playing on iHeartRadio. You can also watch the archive podcasts on YouTube. Connect with Christine on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, including her newest Facebook group, The Great Mother Calling. Do share with family, friends, colleagues. Join us next time for another edition of HeartSpeak.